This is the Brave New Coin Crypto Conversation, hosted by Andy Pickering.
Hi everyone, Andy Pickering here. I'm your host and welcome to the Crypto Conversation, a Brave New Coin podcast where we talk to the people building the future in the Bitcoin, blockchain and cryptocurrency space. My guest today is Jake Sally. Jake is an Emmy-nominated producer, but Jake is also the Chief Operating Officer at Jadu. And Jadu is a pioneering AR platform for Web3 and the Metaverse. Welcome to the show, Jake.
It's lovely to be here on Thanksgiving Eve.
Yes, indeed. Thanksgiving. Well, happy Thanksgiving to all the American listeners all around the world. Thinking of you at this time. And Jake, the funny thing about Thanksgiving traditionally is it's always been a kind of inflection point for crypto, right? Like particularly if you cast your mind back to 2017, do you remember what happened after Thanksgiving?
After Thanksgiving, so I'll be totally honest, Andy. I would say new to the crypto space over the last year or so. Primarily, I've been spending my time mostly in the XR world. So I would love a quick history lesson from you, if you don't mind.
Well, I mean, I guess what happened was it's become a meme now, right? So the idea is that every Thanksgiving, families get together again. Everyone goes home, and there's always that one guy at the family table who is the black sheep of the family because they've gone out and they've gone deep into crypto or DeFi, and this year it will be NFTs. And so they'll be the young one at the table, and they may have made for them and for their family what is probably a large sum of money, perhaps in a small amount of time, doing something that no one else in the family understands. So then it's on that person to kind of say to their families, well, guys, I'm here to teach you how NFTs work over our turkey Thanksgiving lunch. And so the short version is in 2017, I think Bitcoin went on to double in price in the sort of the weeks after Thanksgiving. But anyway. Sorry.
I do love that though, because it's funny. I actually just watched an SNL skit too the other night, and they both had that kind of like memeable version of the person who's like, let me introduce you to what crypto is. And it's so funny because I remember being that person for XR, and I would come home for the holidays with the newest VR headset or AR headset, and I'd be like, preaching the good word, be like, look, put this on your head, like let's see what it is. And I think there's this, it was easier for me to do that than it is to explain what I'm doing now, because there was this tangible nature to it. I could be like, look, it's really hard to explain. You could talk about VR and say, hey, let's put on a 6-stop headset and there's all these hand trackings going on. Or I could just jam this thing onto your face and you'll just understand it fundamentally. And I think what's been actually really interesting is that job, as we're getting into the NFT space, I think it is actually easier. And it's been interesting to see. My family is like very used to me coming back and kind of like saying all these crazy words, but being able to make these NFTs somewhat tangible and be like, oh, I can see them in the space, which is largely what we do, is transitioning them from a purely digital space into a physical one, I think might be helpful for that. So I've got a lot of faith for Thanksgiving this year.
I love it. All right. Well, that's a fun intro to the show, actually. So I think we should backtrack and start again from the top, Jake, in terms of, I would love it if you could please just introduce yourself. And so you've kind of hinted that you come from this AR, XR, mixed reality background, and that's sort of your background, and now you're combining that with, I guess, crypto and specifically NFTs. But yeah, please introduce yourself. And I know you got a fantastically interesting background. Let's hear it.
Yeah, so it's funny. I think over quarantine, I was trying to really put together the narrative thread of my life, as I think a lot of people were, with too much time on their hands. And by way of background, I started off in traditional entertainment. I worked at a talent agency. I had staplers thrown at my head, the whole very much in that the vein of that almost caricature people have of what Hollywood is and what it is to be an assistant. And I kind of worked my way through that. I was enjoying it, but I wasn't like in love with it, right? I wasn't spending my nights and weekends dreaming about it, reading extra strips. And I ultimately, I put on a VR headset one day at some, you know, small fringe festival event. And I was like, my entire like mind changed. I was like, oh my God, this is my nights and weekends. This is the thing. And I was working at Hasbro Studios at the time. And so, you know, I became a bit of a fanatic. I was like, look, you know, let me teach you about this technology. I was spending all my time researching it. And eventually I was able to transition into a job where I could really focus on XR full time. And I worked at this company, 2-Bit Circus, which at the time they were like Imagineers for Disney Imagineers for hire. So they would build all of these crazy things. And, you know, this is early VR. So there were all these quote unquote rules of what you were supposed to do and weren't supposed to do. And 2-Bit just kind of threw all that out the window. They were like, look, you know, we're going to use, you know, techno cranes to move VR. We're going to make, you know, replicas of Formula One cars. And we're going to put people into those. And it was such a great entry point because it really destroyed this idea of you can't do things. And I think that's really important for both the XR space and where we are now, which we'll talk more about in a minute. And so I spent a lot of time building XR projects, and specifically for me, you know, I was an English major. I'm not coming from an engineering background, but I love engineers. I love how engineers think. I love being able to bring them complex problems. And when I started working at Riot, which is like Verizon's content innovation arm before taking this job, I got to kind of max that out and start taking all this time that I was spending with engineers and begin working with engineers who are also artists. This kind of like, you know, creative technologist is this like grab bag term for anyone that like can code a little bit, but also is artistic. And so I spent about 3 years there, produced like 40 plus XR projects, AR, VR, projection mapping, anything that involved technology and storytelling. I really love spending my time there. We did some indie video games. And while I was there, I actually met Asad, who is the CEO of Jadu. And we only had like we had one of these like 10-minute meetings, like meet and greets to see like myself as a financier, if I wanted to finance this project. And in 10 minutes, he fundamentally changed my entire perception of what augmented reality was, what it could be, and how it could make you feel things. And AR was at a point then where it was like the first HoloLens. Things were, you know, a little grainy. It was hard to evoke emotion with it, but he could do it. And he did do it. And he did in 10 minutes. And it kind of kicked off this long standing relationship that we've had of me producing his projects, him coming up with really pushing the boundaries of what is possible with AR. And that kind of all leads us to really present day, which is now that we've transitioned from AR headsets are amazing. We did great projects with AR headsets, but they couldn't reach enough people. And for us, we kind of had these different hardware manufacturers like Magic Leap and Microsoft who were great, but not necessarily arbiters of culture. And we set out really with Jadu 1.0 to build a platform where we could make the things we wanted to make and we could reach people. Because mobile AR is like finally hit this inflection point where it's really, really good. And it can do a lot of what a headset can do. And so we've been working on Jadu for a number of years. And it's really kind of all led to this moment where we found what I consider for myself like the aha moment of, as NFTs have begun to transition from 2D into 3D assets, now we have a very particular skill set that we can bring to the table and build with people. So that's kind of like, that's the narrative thread. But it's all kind of tied together around this idea of complex problem solving, which is my favorite thing in the world to do.
Awesome. I love it, Jake. Well, let's then begin to understand what Jadu is then. So I've heard we've heard the terms AR, VR, and XR, and you know most people listening will have a kind of a basic understanding of what we mean there, and a lot of people listening to this, they'll probably have heard of Jadu as well. But you know, just for anyone who hasn't, I guess you know the kind of the exciting takeaways that you guys are effectively building hoverboards and jetpacks for metaverse characters. You know, if you wanted to kind of explain Jadu in one sentence and kind of language that is going to get anyone excited, that is it, because, you know, it doesn't really get any cooler than jetpacks and hoverboards. But so I guess if that's the kind of the high level, just go a step beyond that and explain what Jadu is.
Yes. So I love building these logic trains. So for us, you know, fundamentally, we're an augmented reality company. We're building an AR platform that's really the definitive Web3 AR platform. And what that means is we are adding augmented reality utility to existing 3D NFTs. We're very focused right now on avatars. So if you have a 3D avatar project, we want you to be able to use that character in augmented reality on your phone. And what we're building on top of that is like this horizontal utility layer of NFTs that we're building, which in this case, as you touched on, include jetpacks, which allow your avatars to fly in augmented reality, and the upcoming drop we have, Jadu Hoverboards, which are going to allow you to cruise through space. And the intent behind this is we're building out a world scale AR game where players are going to be able to use their jetpacks and their hoverboards to fly around and go to, you know, physical real world locations to find other in-game NFT items. And, you know, I think there are so many people building really interesting VR and computer-based metaverses, but for us, we don't want to lose touch with reality. We think reality is the best level, game level you could possibly have. So that's really what we're incentivized to do is like, and again, for people, we spent a lot of years introducing tons and tons of people to this technology of augmented reality, and in ways that are a bit more complex than just a face filter. Face filters are great. It's introduced a lot of people to AR, but as more and more of the world become, you know, consider themselves gamers, a face filter is not going to cut it. And the way we're building this is that these 3D avatars that you have that are NFTs, they're playable characters. And these game items, these NFTs that we're making, they're game items. They're things that are going to give you new features, new powers. And we're really setting this, again, as like the world is the game. And you striking out on this adventure to find these things with hoverboards and jetpacks in your backpack, that's what we're excited to be building.
Yeah, it's so exciting, Jake. And this is probably a good point in the podcast then to, because you touched on it here, where you talk about how you guys, from your perspective, you see the real world as kind of the real playground or the first version of the metaverse. So, you know, the way I kind of see it, there's going to be competing versions or competing visions, if you like, of what the metaverse can or should be. So there's all these different versions, and at the same time, there's kind of competing versions or visions between AR, VR, and I guess XR, right? And at the same time, there's all these new NFTs and NFT teams popping up. But what people maybe don't understand about you guys is that you guys are like a long-standing AR team. You guys go back quite deep, a lot of your team. So it's you are kind of a new NFT project, but in some ways, NFTs have just been the spark that kind of has made it all make sense. I don't know if that's quite right, but yeah, love to hear your perspective.
I think
on that.
Verbatim, it's correct. Like so I've produced 40 XR projects, right? We made more, and I think the thing that XR has always struggled with is the business model. And for me, advertising, selling ads is like the most boring business model. It works for AR, but it's not very interesting. It's great if you want to buy a couch, you can see an ad for whatever the couch is. You click through, you buy it. There's great statistics that it works really well, but it's boring, right? And for me, complex problems. So I think, we spend our time, we've worked with, people like Serena Williams, making holograms of them. There's all of these elements that have kind of come together. And again, I've produced 40 XR projects. Jadu was able to, we made more in 20 seconds on our first NFT drop than I made in 40 projects over 3 years. And to me, it was this true aha moment of, this is the missing piece of the puzzle for augmented reality games to reach mainstream adoption. Because when you're looking at anything you could do, because I'm a huge gamer. I love PC games, I love Xbox games, I play all sorts of games. So the value proposition has to be very real for you to step away from one of these other platforms that have, infinitely deep wells of content, super high fidelity graphics, to do something in AR. And I think the novelty of AR is definitely a really fun part of it. And again, being able to step out into the world and do something that is a bit different than potato in your chair. And again, I love potatoing in my chair, but to know that there's a financial mechanism that incentivizes people to get out and play is awesome. Like I play, I don't know, there's a couple of games I put thousands of hours into. And I think my kids will look back and laugh, being like, you spent all these hours, you don't own any of this stuff? That's ridiculous. So yeah, I really think for us, we've played around with so many business models. I really think that NFTs and kind of crypto gaming is solving this fundamental issue that AR games have had.
Yeah. And so look, so we've talked about jetpacks and hoverboards, and the jetpacks exist. So that's the drop that made I guess effectively funded you guys, and then hoverboards, that drop is coming up really soon. So we'll talk about hoverboards. We'll go deep into hoverboards soon, because there was some cool announcements about that I saw just a few hours ago. We'll get there, but I think Snoop Dogg, Lewis Hamilton. But explain then, what the Mirrorverse is, or this AR game that you're building, and maybe if you want to, I don't know if it's a fair comparison or not, but I remember back in, when was it? Was it 2017, 2018, when the Pokemon Go kind of AR game kind of took over the world for a little while there. And I always thought that, there'd be another one soon after, but that there hasn't been anything to that scale. But yeah, so what are you guys trying to do with the Mirrorverse? How will it work? And is it global, or is it like location specific to begin with? Talk to me.
Yeah. And so, I mean, the Pokemon Go thing's crazy. Like, they're still making like almost $1 billion a year, by the way. It's nuts. I think that a lot of the other ones haven't worked, that are because the IP isn't quite right? And you have to like really think about it organically. And for us, the Mirrorverse is the augmented reality manifestation of the metaverse, which is a bit of a heady sentence. But again, fundamentally, it's how do we take all the characters and the worlds that exist in the metaverse and bring those into the physical world. And Jadu is really building out a narrative layer to this, right? That justifies how all these things coexist and what is the game that is being played. I think Pokemon Go is not a bad comparison, honestly. I think the big difference is the complexity of the AR that's being done. So Pokemon Go was revolutionary at the time because it was literally just, you could see the 3D version of the Pokemon in your physical space. That was it. And the game loop that they had developed didn't really lend itself to that being helpful. In fact, a lot of people, myself included, when I was playing, would turn off the AR feature because it was kind of distracting and it didn't quite make sense. For what we're doing, we are taking kind of this 5+ years of AR work and pouring all of that into really rich, complex augmented reality interactions, right? I think, we spend a lot of time thinking what's going to feel good in AR. And for the average person that's kind of coming into this, they don't have years of AR experience. They just need it to be a great experience off the bat, that's why jetpacks are so awesome, honestly. It's you're like pure childhood wish fulfillment. And, when you boost for the first time with that thing, you shoot into the air, you don't kind of like putter up. It's like you really feel like your character is flying. And so we spend a lot of time testing and seeing what's going to really feel natural in the space and make sure that the characters do carry weight and that they move how you would expect them to move in reality. And it's definitely going to be something for us. Our audience already through our Discord, as we know, is it's a global audience. It has to be a global game. I think we're really excited and coming off of the success of things like Axie Infinity, where it's reaching these places like the Philippines. Is we want that too. We want people all over the world to be able to participate this and not just have it be a select group of people in major US cities, I don't think it works as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I said we'd talk about hoverboards, right? So let's maybe start to talk about the hoverboard drop, because that is coming up very soon. And I guess, feel free to lead off with the announcement that you guys made earlier today. There's some pretty big names that are collaborating on this drop, aren't there?
Yes. So we are going to be partnering, we just announced today, with a couple like major cultural icons. We've got Lewis Hamilton, F1 racer. We've got Grimes, one of the earliest artists playing in the NFT space. We've got Snoop Dogg, who has been diving so deep into it, and I think has brought a lot of upbeat attitude. And then we have visual artists like Mimi Anaha, and then we also have this NFT curator that we have a long time partnership with Trippy, who is kind of home to some of the largest psychedelic communities in the world. And I think what's really important about this is when we set out to do this, we wanted to make sure that we had a really diverse range of people, because these partnerships represent largely the world that Jadu's building. And we wanted this to be as representative as it could be. And really what that means is we wanted to have someone like Mimi, who's coming from kind of like a data art background, as much as we want Snoop Dogg, as much as we want folks like Trippy, so that there is this kind of like kaleidoscopic view, and people, regardless of where they're coming from, can feel like they are really excited about these. And these are items that basically, with each of the artists that we're working with, they're collaborating with us to design what will be the ultra rare items in the hoverboard collection. So it's been honestly really fun. We haven't done any of the reveals yet of what the designs look like, but it's shaping up to be honestly like very special.
Yeah, and so, well, let's dig into some of the nerdier stuff with the hoverboards, right? So, I believe there's going to be there'll be 5,555 in total. The drop date is the 12th of December. The mint price 0.222 ETH, and I'm just looking through the website, and there's different. So you got hoverboard classic, there's hoverboard light, there's hoverboard duo, is it, and hoverboard X. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, and of course the hoverboard signature series, and I guess that's with all these collabs. So maybe talk us through why there are different levels. Are these simply different rarities? I think there's some different performance characteristics. So why have you done that, and what kind of impact does that have, and how these hoverboards will perform in the Mirrorverse?
Yes. So really glad you brought this up, because I think this hasn't honestly gotten enough attention necessarily from us quite yet, but so there's a really wide range of hoverboards, and I think the intent that we have behind this, for Jadu Jetpacks, there were really 3 types plus the gold jetpack. They all have a uniform utility to them, and that was our first drop. We really wanted to nail the design and the AR functionality. As we've kind of moved into the second collection, we've been really focused on continuing to push and tinker with what's possible with augmented reality, right? And I think that's, for us, that's what's most interesting about this. And so we have a really wide range of hoverboards, because we want people there are pluses and minuses depending on who you are and the type of board you want. There's basically 3 key stats. Different hoverboards are going to have speed, handling, and jump, and those will dictate how fast the board goes, how quickly you can turn with it, and how high you can jump with it. So this will be, as we move into the larger game world, these will be very important stats that kind of dictate different approaches to how you tackle some of the games and things that we'll be rolling out. I think what's really nice, and we're really, honestly, this is what probably like some of the game theory I'm most excited about, which is, are people going to choose, do people care more about colors or speed? Do they care more about how many people can be on the board, or do they care more about how high it can jump? And I think what's nice is there's a real diversity to this that allows everyone to find the board that's right for them. And so that part of it, I think, is getting to be quite fun. And then obviously the partnership boards are going to be out of control when we start to reveal kind of how those break down as well.
Yeah, so it's kind of my head is spinning, Jake, because I'm just looking at it now and I'm thinking, and one part of my brain is going to Mario Kart, right? Because you know the kind of the different handling and speed trade-offs between the different karts you can race, and then the other part of my brain is I just bought a paddle board, right? And so like
Yes.
me and my son have been going paddleboarding, and we're getting another one, and it's the same thing. It's like, because do you get the inflatable one, which is kind of, it's more stable for beginners, or you get the kind of the hard one, which you can go smoother and faster, and it's kind of the same thing, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's exactly that. And I used to skateboard, I still snowboard, and it was
Yeah.
the same type of thing. You know, it's like, what type of trucks are you getting? All that impacts, and again, your particular style. And I think we've really designed, same with hoverboard or with jetpacks, but you know, there's a nice learning curve to using it. It's, you can definitely start boosting around and doing fun things, but I think there's going to be, to like be a true expert, you will be, your play style will be really dependent on like the type of board you want. It's like, you know, if you're someone who has maybe slower reaction times, but you love going fast, like a board that has really good handling to compensate for that is perfect for you. But if you're someone who's got, you know, incredible reaction time, and you're like, oh, I actually need the board to go a little bit slower because otherwise I'm kind of like crashing into things. You can kind of like play around with them, see what works best. And yeah, by the way, paddleboarding, man, I have tried that before. I'm like 6'4", so it's, I don't know if it's designed for really tall people, but I don't think I've ever eaten shit more in my life than falling off a paddleboard for like 2 hours.
Yeah, you just need to get that. You need a big stable board to begin with, and then
Yes, I should have gotten looked at more boards.
yeah. Well, Lewis Hamilton, right? So like I'm an F1 fan, so like I love watching the races, and so yeah, I follow Lewis Hamilton. So I was really stoked to read that, because he's a cool guy. He does a lot of really good things for you know, standing up for diverse communities around the world. But you know, he's also, I guess, a bit of a tech guy, and he's a fashion guy. So it's cool to see him do. I guess it's probably this. I think this is his first crypto / blockchain / NFT partnership. So it's really cool for you guys that he's done this with you. So I have to ask, you know, is there anything you can hint about his board? I mean, I'm guessing that his board will be one of the faster ones. That just makes sense, right?
It is definitely going to go very, very fast.
Yeah.
But and I think it'll speak to a bit of his ethos that you touched on, of representing diverse communities. So yeah, I think we're pouring a lot of love into these board designs with him. So yeah, I think it's going to be a great one. I can't say more than that yet.
Understand. All right. Well, is there anything else you want to tell us about the I guess the drop for these things? So yeah, I mean,
so I was going to say, so I think one thing that's really helpful to understand is, for us, we really want to, like, we're pouring a lot of energy into making sure that the community that's been with us from the beginning is really benefiting from this. And you know, I think it since our first drop, we were an AR company, you know, we still are, but we were an AR company that's making this first thing. It was these jetpacks. People weren't 100% sure, but they really believed in us. And so if you own a Jadu Jetpack, you're going to get automatically airdropped to you. No gas fees, we're covering them. A Jadu Hoverboard, and then Jetpack Pro and Trippy Jetpack holders will also have whitelist spots associated with that. And we're going to be rolling out over the next couple of weeks a bunch of really interesting ways for people to get on the whitelist, so that people can participate. Like we did a lovely, this was really like a highlight of like last week for me, was we had a channel where really everyone could introduce themselves. And we're going to pick the most, what we thought were some of the most creative and like heartwarming introductions that people did. Like one person made an entire website. You know, so one person was talking about like their journey from childhood to adulthood and like where Jadu fits into that. And I think what's really important as we collectively as a community continue to march forward is that this does feel something that is really healthy, right? I think when we get out into the AR game world, it's really easy. You're running around physically, but I think, you know, I definitely spend a lot of time on Discord, and we want it to be a place where people feel like they're getting as much out of it as they're putting into it. So that whole side of it, I don't know, it really, it keeps me up at night, but we're really trying to we want people to smile, right? If they're in our Discord, they should be happy. It should be something where you can not just be like lost in the sea of all the people kind of like burning through chat, but you can be like, oh, I can actually make genuine connections here. And for us, that, the connection point is, yes, a shared love of the NFTs that are being created, but also think about a bit about like, a lot about everyone here who's in this, AR pioneer. AR is still very new outside of like the face filter side of it. And to be on the forefront of that and really the lead adventurers defining what augmented reality is going to be in the future, I think is really fun.
Absolutely, absolutely, Jake. And one thing that I was wondering about then is, how do you, what's the kind of trade-off between, there's a certain amount of jetpacks that exist, and there's going to be 5,555 hoverboards that exist. But what about all the other people that, miss out, and then they still want to partake in the Mirrorverse universe? How can they get involved in the future?
Regardless, you'll definitely be able to participate in the game with or without a hoverboard or a jetpack. Avatar is kind of like the core piece of this. I think we've done a really interesting thing where if you are the owner of an avatar, you verify through your wallet that you own it. You have two options. You can have it private, where only you can use it, or you can actually make it public to the larger Jadu community if they want to run around with it. So like, for example, I don't know, I have a younger brother who is in college. He's not really in a position to afford some of these avatar NFTs. But so this idea that we really want to make onboarding and let as many people play as possible. You shouldn't have to be in a position where you have to spend thousands of dollars to play the game. Is like, it's not going to work for us. We've been playing around with, rental systems. What does it look like if you're a jetpack holder? You're like, yeah, I would definitely rent out my jetpack so that someone can use it for a day or for a week type thing. I think there'll be really interesting mechanics coming out over the next, couple months here, where people start to figure this piece of it out. Because you're right, which is already, we can support about 50,000 different avatars. And what we're talking about right now is a supply of like 6.6 thousand jetpacks and hoverboards. How do we get more people into this and feel like they can have the benefits of flight? So we're working on that.
Yeah, that makes sense, Jake. And yeah, I mean, you're right. It's just, this is it's a new world. It's because it's a mirror to the real world. And, teams like yours are really just building it out as we go. But there's such a good opportunity with NFTs and blockchain and Web3 to add this kind of missing layer of economics, right? And it just makes it just unlocks so many opportunities. And man, I mean, it's going to be really exciting to see where this all goes over the next decade, right?
Yeah. So, and I think just like giving, honestly, a lot of the like AR community like some breathing room, right? Like a lot of these projects, it's like, okay, you're either doing it on you're either doing like a service work project, or you're like scrapping together a couple, rubbing together two pennies to do your passion project. And it's really hard. And this, I think, the more breathing room creators have to create, the less time they're worried about like, what's the bottom line, the more incredible the projects become. So I think more than anything, this is unlocking freedom to build better versions of an AR future.
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly right. And like one thing I noted, there was a recent study that I saw that, younger people today, so they say they are 60% more inclined to care about the way they present themselves online or in virtual worlds, as opposed to the real world. I mean, I might be saying that slightly wrong, but I think you know what I'm saying. It's just there's this incredible shift to these virtual worlds, and it just makes sense that people they're going to flex their avatars. They're going to want to flex their jetpacks or their unique hoverboards, and whatever else comes next, and everything is just infinitely tradable.
Well, and that's honestly, sorry, one last one. It's like, I think one thing that's like crazy to me a little bit is, there's a couple of, I think it's hard because people are individuals and they're spending like real dollars to get these avatars that either they think have financial upside, but I think more and more will be like reflections of self.
Yes.
And for us, one of the number one things we looked at early on was we have to build this in such a way that we can support different artistic styles. It's for us and what we're doing, it's not going to work if everything looks the same, because it's just too limiting creatively for the reality of how outrageous everyone in the world is. And we want that. We want humanoid rabbits like the Fluffs. We want I'm a Degens. We want Vox style cybercons. We want Meebits. We want all of those things to live in augmented reality in the real world. And I think you're totally right, which is the more people see themselves in their avatars, the more important it is that we make sure that that reflection is maintained when we build something for them.
Yeah, and I'm pleased you brought up those different projects there. Shout out to the Fluffs. The Fluffs are obviously a New Zealand. They're a New Zealand project, yes. So I know those guys well, and I have a Fluff myself. So shout out to the Fluff Lambo gang and the Fluff June gang, if there's any Fluff holders listening. But I guess as we start to finish off this part of the podcast, Jake, maybe just because it's just such a fascinating idea, like anything else you want to talk to in terms of the kind of the gameplay mechanics of how the Mirrorverse will work? You kind of talked about how you're kind of traveling around in the real world, but with this AR narrative layer over the top, and I guess you have the ability to collect and interact, not just with other AR characters, but other NFTs. So maybe talk about some of the in-game experiences, and also, I suppose, the roadmap that you guys are trying to stick to in terms of the product rollout, and any of the challenges along the way, because I'm sure there are many. This is big stuff, I know.
Yes, and I'm going to be a little cagey, unfortunately, but I think one of the big things is definitely for us, new types of AR mechanics, right? And as we build out this world, the more items, we've introduced people to the idea of transportation mechanics in augmented reality, which is tied around flight and cruising. So that's really interesting. And you can expect to hear for us to be exploring a much wider range of game mechanics. Personally, I would love to see something like a Q-Claw. Spider-Man was my favorite superhero growing up, and like how can we have these characters continuing to navigate the real world in different ways. We haven't even begun to brush the surface of what LiDAR has to offer in terms of mobile augmented reality. So how you're able to map spaces for better and more rich AR experiences where the characters have a much more complex understanding of the real world around them. We're very curious about context, right? Like how well can an avatar understand or begin to explore? Like, can it recognize this is a chair? Great. Can it recognize this is a tree? And like what types of interactions start to build out of those types of things? So I think there's a couple layers to this, and they're all, for people that are not familiar with AR, it should start to feel like magic. And I think the technology has reached that point, and Jadu means magic in Urdu. And that's something that is very much a North Star of ours is, yes, it's using a lot of complex technologies. We sit here and we say, hey, we're building a blockchain game powered through augmented reality. You're like, those are a lot of buzzwords. But if you fundamentally, what you're saying is you can own a character that has a semantic understanding of the world around it, and that's going to dictate gameplay. That's wild. And we all want people to get lost in the story. And when, I think as storytellers and game designers, all of this is predicated on really putting players to sleep and letting them dream this great dream. And when the technology doesn't work, the dream breaks and you wake up. And the more we can have people live in this world and have it feel as real as, the desk and the chair that's probably near them as they listen to this podcast, that's amazing. And I think, again, the beauty is it's finally good enough. Mobile AR wasn't good enough 2 years ago. It wasn't good enough maybe even a year ago, but it's just now really, really good. And what I'm excited about with everything that crypto and NFTs bring to the table is the smartest people in the world are aping into this space like crazy. And I love that because it's the same thing that happened in XR. It really is. The difference is, I think the fundamental technology layers, so many of them are there. It's so much easier for someone to download the Jadu app, import characters from their wallet and get rolling than it is to be like, hey, like go buy a VR headset, set up these base stations, like, do some hand. It's like, it's a lot of pieces.
Wonderfully said, Jake. Thank you very much for that. Just, magical, surprising, delightful experiences in the real world. It makes us all feel like we're kids again. So that's kind of the magic of AR. So really, really exciting to see you guys, roll all this stuff out. Let's go to a very quick break and then we'll come back and we'll finish off with the very famous crypto conversation, hot take round.
For crypto indices and benchmarking, Brave New Coin's powerful indexing engine can calculate high-frequency intraday and end-of-day indices for a wide range of index products. Brave New Coin's custom indices team delivers experienced consultancy, premium data, and trusted calculation. Contact BNC today to find out more.
All right, we're back and I'm with Jake Sally. Jake is the Chief Operating Officer at Jadu. And well, as we've heard, hoverboards coming very soon. So, if you're not already in the Jadu Discord, I would suggest that is probably the best place to stay up to date with the developments around the hoverboard drop, which is fast approaching. Jake, I like to finish each podcast with a quick round of rapid fire crypto conversation hot takes. Are you up for it?
Yes, I love this, by the way. I'm all about it.
Awesome. So Jake, I'm just going to throw some questions at you. There's no right or wrong answers. Just, give me your opinion, hot take style, really. The first one, I don't know if it's super appropriate to you, but where would you say that you sit on the Bitcoin maximalist to multi-coin opportunist spectrum?
I'm team multi-coin. Honestly, I think there's too many things happening, and Bitcoin's awesome. Obviously, it has a ton of value. It's not going anywhere soon, but I don't think it's the most interesting coin that people are going to be building on top of.
Yeah, totally makes sense. All right, well, here's one that's very much in your specific wheelhouse, Jake. Hot take style. VR versus AR. Why?
Yes. They're two, I'm going to give my hot take answer is I'm team AR. Much easier for people to access. And I think the more complex AR becomes, especially for headset, the line is going to get blurred where it's a little difficult to tell between the two of them. VR is amazing, but I think I've put enough VR headsets on people's faces to know people don't like VR headsets on their faces. So I think it's gonna be hard for that one to scale at the rate that AR can.
Yeah, and because I think I've seen, the stats here. I think I've seen studies that show, people, it goes against something about your basic human instinct to have a VR helmet on your face for an extended period of time. And it's just unnatural for people, right?
Yeah.
All right. What would you say then, Jake, is your firmest conviction crypto opinion?
I think my firmest conviction is that you really are doing a disservice to yourself, even if you don't like it, even if you don't understand it, even if you don't plan on working in it. Like if you're a book author, like maybe you don't care about this, but you have to know what it is. And one of the tenets of my life is evolve or die. And this is not going anywhere. So people just need to get comfortable with it. And you should definitely understand it enough to have an informed opinion on why you don't think it's for you. Yeah,
that's such a good way of approaching Web3. I think people just, Yeah, they do owe it to themselves just to get, even if it's a limited understanding, and then you can dismiss it, but you can't just dismiss it out of hand from a false pretext. But Jake,
I also, sorry, real quick. I think one thing too is you're like, you know, I remember working in VR early, and like I went to Google something and I got 0 search results back. I don't think I've ever had that happen in my life. And what's so amazing about Web3 and all of cryptos, there's so many resources. You have 0 excuse. And I'm like a diehard go Google something. Like don't tell me you can't understand it. It's just you're just full of it. And that's my hottest take, which is if you say you really can't understand it, it means you haven't spent any real time trying to do it. Like everyone's a cognizant, really deep thinking adult that has at least nominal access to the internet. If you spend a couple days, it may take a couple weeks, you can get it. There's nothing in here that is beyond the grasp of an average person.
Could not have said it better, Jake. Well, look, Bill Gates famously said that we tend to overestimate what we can accomplish in 2 years and underestimate what we can accomplish in 10. So look, just feel free to extrapolate, feel free to speculate. It's what we do. What do you think AR, what is it, AR and the metaverse, what does it look like in 10 years time?
AR and the metaverse in 10 years time, I think the line between your physical and your digital self will be non-existent. And I think one of the most important things that I think places like Meta get wrong is this idea that there will be this separation where you kind of like, you put on your digital suit and tie and your digital, your fancy adult avatar, and you go do adult things. And then you'll get home or take off the headset or the AR headset, and then you'll like put on your wacky dinosaur one and go do your kind of like crazy gaming and things. People are used to the internet enough that I think that line, we're finally hitting this inflection point where I've been in, business meetings where someone is on Zoom as a crazy animal, and it doesn't bother me at all. And I don't think it will bother people that much in the future. And this idea that you have to have this separation in a world where everything's colliding, I think will be a little bit archaic.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Jake. And in a roundabout way, that kind of relates back to, if we bring it back to kind of, Lewis Hamilton's support for diverse communities around the world. That's one of the cool things about, these avatars is it's just natural now or very soon will be. And this is why people relate so much to whatever their NFT tribe or community is, whether it's, the Fluffs or the Meebits or there's so many others, because you can just express yourself in whatever wild and wonderful way. And so it's, you can literally be anything, which is crazy.
I mean, yeah, people used to, tattoos were a big deal once upon a time. I think this whole, people still get really weird about, braids for hair. There's just, I think, certain elements that will be kind of done away with. Now, look, I think the one thing to always keep in mind is, how uncomfortable you're making someone else. And there's kind of, my right to look like a dinosaur when I'm on a call is one thing, but I think, there's kind of silly and fun, and then there's something that's causing either emotional or mental harm to someone. We don't want it to dip into that world.
Yeah, absolutely. That is well said as well. Well, Jake, William Gibson said that the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. So, I mean, we've kind of talked about many already today, but can you think of an example of the future being here right now, but most people just aren't really aware of it?
I think haptic gloves. We're here. This company Haptics, I love them. I absolutely love them. And I think I think we're gonna definitely present day, definitely in the immediate future, the idea that this extra layer of haptic feedback, I think it exists already. It's a little bit elaborate to do, there's haptic vests and haptic gloves and these things. But I think that, coming from my time working at 2-Bit Circus, the number one thing that delivers, tricks your brain in terms of immersion is the haptic quality of it. And it just kind of hijacks your brain enough that it can make these things that aren't real feel very, very real. And I think haptics are getting really, really good.
Yeah, fascinating, because that's and Ready Player One, that's one of the big things is I forget how it works, but he gets the better suit that he has the full haptics, and that's how he can get the kind of the erotic sensory stuff happening as well, right?
Exactly.
How far away is something like that then?
A couple extra years, maybe.
That soon? Soon?
I think so. I mean, again, like, is it in someone's lab that will not necessarily see like widespread adoption in light of day? Totally. But, I think we already see like these, like, I think the things that we see as like that are quote unquote in the lab is like, those are still good versions that are public. It's like the things that are like deep R&D by companies right now, I'm sure would melt some face.
Oh, can't wait to get my face melted. All right.
All about it.
As we start to finish off, Jake, it's time to zoom out, time to get weird. What do you see as the long-term future for the human race? Do you see dystopia or utopia?
I think it's all a matter of perception. Like, was it Dante's Inferno? They're like, the mind can make a heaven of hell or a hell of heaven. And I think that's really true, right? Like, it could be, there's always, and there has been for years in the XR space, like, like VR is going to be the opioid of the masses and like keep everyone, calm while the world is destroyed. It's like, I don't think it's that crazy. And I think the thing that I am most excited about is, and this is like a passion of mine, I know we've done some work, is like education, right? Like I went to an expeditionary learning middle school, which meant we'd go out and like go canoeing, and somehow that would teach us about life. But it really did. And I think this idea that you can unlock these new experiences for people that really begin to develop who they are in interesting new ways at a really affordable price is like, that's great. I love that. And it just lets people kind of step out of their ordinary state of consciousness into kind of some of these abstracted worlds. And that sparks a lot of questions, and questions are good, and critical thinking is good. And I think these are all ways to kind of spur that. I'm definitely, by and large, I'm a pragmatic optimist, which is really to say there's always lots of work to be done, but the work, the juice is worth the squeeze.
I love it. I love it. All right, let's close this out, Jake. The final question is, what is your favorite science fiction book, film, TV show, or universe?
I'm a pretty big anime nerd, so I'm a very big fan. There's this great anime called Code Geass, Lelouch of the Rebellion, which combines superpowers, mecha fights, and this like world scale political chess game that I just find I rewatch the whole series every year and I'm still stupefied at how they managed to pull it off, because it's outrageous to have all those things in one show.
What's the title again, sorry?
Yeah, it's called Code Geass, Geass, Lelouch of the Rebellion. Basically, it follows a disavowed prince who's sent to a far-flung place, which in this case is Japan. And it's him basically starting a rebellion against this dominating world power, and his like slow each and every move he makes to get back and destroy the empire. It's awesome.
Awesome. Sounds amazing. All right, well, this has been...
I will say though, Dune is my gospel. Like, that movie, I love it. It's so good.
Awesome.
As someone who honestly was I'm lukewarm on the book, and I read a lot of like pretty intense fantasy, but for me that one just never hit. But the movie, I think, is a great distillation of it, so I'm excited for part 2.
Awesome. Yeah, I haven't seen part 1 yet, but very much
I saw it in like a small theater, like a really small theater, like an early screening, and it was still amazing. But I'm actually gonna go see it in IMAX this weekend, which awesome. Everyone is like, it's a religious experience.
Oh, I'm pumped. Awesome, Jake. This has been so much fun. I've really enjoyed talking to you. And nothing else to say really, except hand the metaphorical microphone back to your good self, and just close it out by giving a final shout out to, I guess, the world that you guys at Jadu are building with the Mirroverse, and tell people where they should go if they want to keep up with what you guys are building, and keep up to date with the hoverboard drop. I guess go for gold.
Yeah, so you can check us out on Discord, Jadu Mirroverse. You can also find us just at Jadu, Jadu.ar. We're spending all of our time building the transportation and fun ways for you to move through the metaverse and in this ever-expanding AR game world that we're building. We've got hoverboards dropping on December 12th, so be on the lookout.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Jake. All the best and bye for now.
Bye.
All right. There you go. Man, how good was that? How cool was Jake? Jake was cool. That was a good chat. I think that might be one of the most, one of the more fun podcasts in recent times, I reckon. Maybe that's just because, I'm fascinated by all this, and I have been watching Jadu for a little while. I've seen the jetpacks, and I have known that these hoverboards have been coming up. So if you haven't seen them in action, you kind of got to see them in action to really understand the kind of capabilities and exciting opportunities that the Mirrorverse will eventually bring to the Metaverse, and this kind of open AR inspired Mirrorverse world. It's all pretty cool. But so I recommend just go to their Twitter or Discord, and you'll see they've published, like, there's lots of little videos you can see of different Metaverse avatars flying around on jetpacks or on hoverboards. And this is just they're really still in just kind of testing beta stage, so lots more to come. But I think it's cool. All right, well, thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope if you've made it to the end, congratulations, well done on making it to the end of the podcast. Please don't forget to subscribe to the Crypto Conversation podcast in whatever podcast app you are using. If you want to get at me, you can always drop me an email, andy@bravenewcoin.com. Always happy to hear feedback on the show, stuff like that. But better leave it there. That's us for today. Thanks again for listening, team. This was the Crypto Conversation for Brave New Coin.